Let's dive right into this explainer, because today we are looking at a business journey that absolutely defies the odds. We're talking about the ultimate David versus Goliath story of Karsanbhai Patel, the visionary founder of Nirma. If you're a fan of those incredible underdog stories where pure grit and a deep understanding of the everyday consumer totally topple massive corporate power, well, you're absolutely going to love this one.
Just picture this for a second. It's the late 1960s in Ahmedabad, India. Every single morning before heading off to his modest government job, a man hops onto his bicycle. His basket is just loaded to the brim with packets of homemade detergent. He rides through the local streets, knocking on doors, and personally selling this powder with a seriously bold guarantee. If you're not satisfied, I'll return your money. I mean, that is an incredibly confident promise for anyone to make, let alone a guy operating entirely out of his own house.
So, that brings us to the really big question we're answering today. How on earth does a lab assistant beat a global conglomerate without spending a single dime on advertising? Because, incredibly, that's exactly what happened. Karsanbhai was born in 1945 into a farmer's family in Rutpur village. They had very limited financial resources. But he managed to get a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, which landed him a gig as a lab assistant in the Gujarat government's Department of Geology and Mining. He was making just a few hundred rupees a month. But, with his chemistry background, he was about to formulate a product that would literally shake up an entire industry.
To really set the scene in the late 1960s, you have to look at this massive contrast. In one corner, the reigning heavyweight, Hindustan Lever Limited. They're this massive multinational giant absolutely dominating the market with their premium detergent Surf. And in the other corner, Karsanbhai Patel, a government lab assistant earning a meager salary, dreaming of building something huge. It honestly looks like an impossible mismatch. But Karsanbhai noticed a glaring blind spot that the giant was completely ignoring.
The secret to his runaway success actually comes down to a massive gap in the market. At the time, Surf was selling for about 13 to 15 rupees per kilogram. Now keep in mind, the average daily wage in India back then was incredibly low. Most middle-class and lower-income families were completely priced out of the detergent market. It was a luxury they just couldn't afford. They had to use really harsh laundry soaps instead. Karsanbhai looked around and saw millions of families who desperately needed an affordable detergent. So instead of trying to compete on luxury, he decided to attack the market purely on price.
To pull this off, in 1969, he launched what was literally a one-man operation. There was no fancy factory, zero venture capitalist loans, no expensive imported machinery. He literally set up shop right in his backyard in Ahmedabad. He hand-mixed the chemicals himself. He prepared the detergent, packed every single packet by hand, printed the labels himself, and then went out and sold every last one of them. I mean, it is the absolute purest form of grassroots entrepreneurship.
And talk about sweat equity, his daily schedule was absolutely grueling. Early in the morning, he's manufacturing detergent and loading it onto his bicycle. Then, he spends his entire morning selling it door to door. After that, he heads to his full-time government lab job. And when the evening finally rolls around, he goes back home and prepares even more detergent to do the whole thing all over again the very next day. For several years, Karsanbhai was basically working 2 full-time jobs just to keep this dream alive.
So here is where his mathematical genius really shines. He completely flipped the script on the industry standard. While his competitors were chasing a high margin of profit on a low number of sales, Karsanbhai took a totally different path. He used a volume-based business model. By selling Nirma at around 3 rupees compared to Surf's 15 rupees, his profit margin on each packet was tiny. But because it was suddenly affordable to millions of everyday families, his sales volume was just astronomically high.
But this wasn't just some cold, calculated business equation. There was a deeply emotional human element to all of this. The brand name he chose, Nirma, actually comes from his daughter Nirupama. According to reports, she tragically passed away at a really young age. So Karsanbhai named the company in her memory. That deeply personal touch gave the business its soul, and that very name would soon become one of the most universally recognized brands in the entire country.
Now, because he was selling this stuff for just 3 rupees, he obviously couldn't afford massive advertising campaigns in those early days. So, he relied on the most powerful marketing engine out there, word of mouth. Remember that guarantee we talked about earlier? If you don't like it, I'll refund your money? By offering direct refunds, he completely erased the risk for first-time buyers. When people actually tried it and saw that it worked, those satisfied customers became his marketing team, enthusiastically recommending Nirma to their neighbors. The business just exploded organically, street by street.
And it's amazing to see how things evolved once they really gained momentum.
By the late 1970s and into the 80s, the company had grown enough that Karsanbhai launched a television commercial that started an absolute marketing revolution. The jingle, "Washing Powder Nirma," became instantly unforgettable. Kids were singing it, adults were humming it. Paired up with that iconic dancing girl in the white dress, it became this incredibly powerful cultural symbol. It proved beyond a doubt that simple, memorable branding could easily go toe-to-toe with the massive ad budgets of global corporations.
Fast forward to the 1980s, and this whole strategy builds into just an absolute victory. Nirma was relentlessly focused on middle-class and rural India with their budget-conscious pricing. Now, Hindustan Lever, who had been targeting wealthy customers, ignored them at first. But Nirma's strategy worked so brilliantly that the multinationals were essentially backed into a corner. To survive what people call the Nirma effect, these global giants actually had to swallow their pride, pivot, and introduce lower-priced detergent options themselves. Karsanbhai had single-handedly changed the entire Indian market forever.
And once the detergent business was stable, he didn't just sit back and relax. Instead of relying purely on himself to sell everything, he went aggressive. He started appointing distributors, scaling up his production capacity, hiring workers, and building out a massive distribution network. What started out as just a guy mixing chemicals in his backyard in Gujarat rapidly spread to other states, officially transforming Nirma into an unstoppable national brand. If we really break down Karsanbhai's playbook, it leaves us with some absolutely essential lessons. Start small, for sure, but always think big. Solve a real, tangible problem that affects millions of people, in this case, basic hygiene affordability. Use low prices as a sharp competitive advantage. Build trust with your customers face-to-face before you even worry about building a massive brand. And remember, having a strong distribution network to actually get the product into local stores is just as critical as having a great product in the first place.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Karsanbhai Patel didn't invent detergent, right? He didn't have access to advanced technology, and he certainly didn't have wealthy investors backing him. He just deeply understood the consumer and made a basic product accessible to millions of people. So take a look around you today. What is the large unmet need waiting to be solved in your world? Where is that next massive gap just hiding in plain sight? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey, and I'll catch you in the next one.